Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're zooming in on a really fascinating slice of life from a fish-keeping log dated July 15, 2026. What starts out as a totally mundane, routine aquarium chore actually transforms into a brilliant lesson on natural ecosystem management. We're going to see exactly how an unexpected problem led to a completely accidental, yet highly effective, biological solution.
Okay, let's dive into this, because this is a scenario that pretty much every aquatic hobbyist absolutely dreads. You know the feeling. You look closely at your glass, your plants, your substrate, and suddenly it hits you. You're no longer just keeping fish, you are hosting a full-on invading snail force. It's a high-stakes microdrama playing out right there in your living room. So how exactly do you handle an absolute takeover of your carefully balanced aquatic environment?
Section 1. The Snail Infestation Problem. An Unwanted Discovery.
Meet our invading force, the Malaysian pond snail, scientifically known as radix-sp. Now, they're common freshwater aquarium snails, and honestly, on their own, a snail or two isn't a huge deal. But their defining characteristic here is their ability to rapidly reproduce. They don't just multiply, they create what the author accurately describes as exploding blooms. They're these tiny, seemingly harmless little creatures that can rapidly infest and just completely overrun an aquatic environment if left unchecked.
To give you the specific context from our source, the author was just going about their normal business. They were in the middle of cleaning up and preparing a brand new tank setup specifically for a pair of kribensis-cichlids, or pelvicachromis-pulcher. But that routine preparation was completely derailed. While working, they noticed that their existing aquarium tanks were suddenly infested with this massive, exploding bloom of Malaysian pond snails. The piece was totally broken, and a cleanup operation was immediately required.
Section 2. The Unlikely Hero. An Aggressive Solution.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the contrast between the standard fix and what actually happened. Typically, the method for dealing with this is incredibly manual and tedious. You're literally scooping the snails out by hand to disperse them. But instead, the author opted for an accidental experiment. They took those scooped-up snails and fed them directly into a tank housing highly aggressive fish. It was basically a roll of the dice to just see what would happen.
And that brings us to the unlikely hero of our explainer, the Golden Mbuna, or Melanochromis-auratus. Now, as defined here, this is a cichlid species, but it really stands out even among its peers. Compared to other cichlids, the Golden Mbuna is fiercely reputed for being notoriously aggressive and highly territorial. They are the tough enforcers of the aquarium world, usually known way more for causing headaches with their tank mates than for actually solving ecosystem problems.
But here is the absolute climax of our microdrama. The author noted, the moment I introduced them to the tank, the Golden Mbuna started to nibble and feed on them. That notorious aggression we literally just talked about, it suddenly became a major asset. The author noticed that the Golden Mbuna actually seemed to relish these snails. The unstoppable invading force finally met an immovable, hungry object. It's just a perfect, albeit accidental example of using biology to balance biology.
Section 3. Other snail-eating fish. The usual suspects. Now, while the Golden Mbuna was an incredible accidental discovery, we need to zoom out for a second. What other freshwater fish actually feed on snails? If you're dealing with an exploding bloom right now, who can you purposefully call in to do the job? And this brilliantly illustrates our toolkit of traditional biological enforcers. Based on the author's gathered research, the usual suspects you can introduce to naturally control a snail population are loaches, pufferfish, and gouramis. These species are naturally predisposed to hunting and eating snails, which makes them a much more standard, predictable choice for pest control than, rolling the dice with an aggressive Mbuna.
In fact, the sheer scale of the invading snail force in the author's tanks means the accidental Mbuna solution might not be enough on its own. The source text notes that in the past, the author had contemplated getting loaches or pufferfish anyway. Now, judging directly from the severity of this exploding snail bloom, they realize this is probably a really good opportunity to explore those two traditional options further in future setups. The accidental discovery was awesome, but sometimes the scale of the problem means you gotta call in the dedicated professionals.
So we arrive at the ultimate takeaway from today's explainer. When you're faced with an invading force like the Malaysian pond snail, you have choices that don't involve harsh chemical treatments. You can use nature to balance nature. Whether it's an accidental discovery like the aggressive Golden Mbuna or calling in the usual suspects like loaches, pufferfish, or gouramis, the ecosystem almost always provides answers. So which biological enforcer would you choose for your own aquatic ecosystem? It's definitely something to think about the next time you look closely at the glass of your tank. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and keep observing your own microdramas.